Hey everybody, I'm Richie. I'm an alcoholic. Pretty grateful to be here. I might ask Mark to turn the temperature down so that we can have a good, effective, hearty discussion. Just thankful for the opportunity to serve, and most of all, just thankful for my sobriety today. My sobriety date is April 10th of 2020, and I'm just thankful. I have so many friends and a host of people I even met tonight, and just really feel like, people think that AA is like this weird, scary place, but like my besties are in here, and people that I love and trust, and people I've known for 20 years, and who've kind of watched me go through this journey. And I was reading a book recently, and Mr. Rogers had a quote in it, and it just hit me so heavy, and it made me think about my recovery. He says, I might have to read it. Here's my secret. It is very simple. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What's essential is invisible to the eye. And I just will go to when I was growing up, as a kid, I'm the fifth of six. I was born in an LDS hospital. There's like a 5-year gap between me and the siblings that are just above me. And I guess my folks had 4 toddlers that were under the age of 5. And then I was the one that God told them, there's one more. We got to have one more, And my dad has later since joked that, Richie's the only one we ever planned on and the only one we ever wanted to send back. And I earned that shit, I earned it. And growing up was decent, I just remember being a happy kid. Some of my first memories is we lived in Farmington just as a toddler, and then we moved up to Seattle, Washington. So I was starting kindergarten and all that stuff up in Seattle, and it was this big adventure, and our whole family was packing up there in the van, and Dad was starting a new venture with work, and having older siblings. I was kind of raised by my siblings. They were all loving, there was just kind of your normal family, there was never real tension, and besides just kind of your normal stuff, and really looked up to my siblings a lot. I became pretty hyper aware of our security and our financial situation as a young kid, because shortly after we moved up to Washington, the job thing with my dad didn't work out, and there was some uneasiness in the home, but for the most part, I loved living in Washington. It was all of my elementary years, and my plan was with my best friend, we were going to move into Bill Gates' mansion and play for the Seattle Supersonics. And I thought that was what was going to happen. It was that was it. And, not only does Sonics not exist anymore, but whatever. But at 12, my dad came home from work one day, and it's kind of a theme, but came home from work, and he's like, we're moving back to Utah. I got a job in Utah, and we're uprooting people. And, of course, I'm just thinking about me, but I had my older brother and sister, they were about to start their sophomore year, and we were super rooted with our community and all that stuff, and sports and all those kind of things, and it was heavy. That was one of my first real emotional upheavals as an 11-year-old. I cried half the way driving back to Utah, and we moved to, I call it Provo North, Fruit Heights, Utah, up by Lagoon in Davis County, and it was just a big shell shock. To me, to be in this, we lived in an affluent neighborhood, we weren't affluent, and it was new friends and all this stuff, and all of a sudden this image, and I have to be someone and prove who I used to be or want to be, and just all that confusing stuff, right as I was hitting puberty, kind of hit. And I think back to that, and I was in those years, I don't even think I'd ever even heard of what a drug was. I found a beer once out in the woods when I was a kid and smelled it, and it was yuck. Or whatever, but my feelings is something that I can just really identify with, and that I look back on, is that 12, 13, 14, it was there was this, I don't know, anybody ever tried to undo an extension cord that's 300 feet long? It was just this nasty knot inside of emotions that were tied up, and I share this sometimes, but it's true for me. My first mood altering thing was altering the truth, and just not being honest. It started with some of my buddies saying I was maybe something that I wasn't, or it started with telling my parents, just to kind of get away. I didn't really want to be at home. I had a pretty big grudge at my folks, and felt separate from them. Both my parents, they're working their asses off. Both of them are working, and I'm trying to impress my buddies. And a thing for me as well back then was just, all I really cared about was sports, and I wanted to be like my older brothers. They were athletes, and so there was a lot of competition and comparison and just all the stuff that comes along with that. And I just really remember 7th grade. I was a lot shorter than I am now. I was just kind of like a little 5'6", like pudgy kid who was trying to play sports, and my older brother would pick on me about being pudgy, and I really, really thought I was fat. And that stuck with me. And, a couple people in school said something about that, and it just brought up these huge, big emotions where, I started to not want to go to school because of certain things, because of image, and just worried about what people were going to say and what people were going to think about me. And, before I ever touched a drug, I had some, serious suicidal ideation, like I'm running away, or I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to kill myself. And so that was kind of how I would get or receive attention in my household, And grew up with a silver tongue, essentially. I had the charm, and then the way I could kind of cut deep with folks, and could kind of talk my way out of anything. And that was really my tool. And it kind of led into junior high school, and I look back at it now, it's a little dramatic. My life was pretty good, Started a little lawn mowing company, did my thing, and I really didn't have it that bad, but those tough times, those emotional times were real, I think back to that little kid, man, and just not wanting to be around that's heavy stuff, and so leading into just kind of developing some of those personality traits and leading into high school, where just kind of the same thing, it was everybody was, cultural LDS, but there's kind of this other side to stuff, and part of my ism is just wanting to be liked by everybody. And it's also, there's a positive to it, I'm friends with everybody, but I had all these pockets of friends, I was a peer tutor for a handicapped person. I was super close with him. I hung out with the skaters. I hung out with the potheads. I hung out with the jocks. And, part of that was just feeling that need to be connected and liked. But it kind of led into, within the span of 18 months, my sophomore year, I had a cliff jumping accident in Lake Powell, where I broke my back. And then tonsils out, emergency appendectomy, broke my foot twice. And was in a couple of car accidents within a year and a half. And this is early 2000s, where you get a loose tooth and they give you 100 pain pills, and that was just a big thing back then. And so that was my first introduction to ever having my mood altered, was through that. But it was mostly from all the attention that I got from all these other people in school who were just hey, what's up? And so that whole secrecy thing kind of coming up. And I think in my high school years, I kind of made the decision I'd be just a little bit of a weekend partier, and really loved that I could change the way that I felt between marijuana and alcohol and pain pills. There was, I don't know if anyone else can relate, but just that first few times where it's holy shit, all those years before, no one told me about this, that I can change the way that I feel, and it goes away. And to the other end of that, I was hiding it all the time. And so kind of became a master of disguise. And, the consequences never really caught up to me. I was constantly getting out of stuff. We won the state championship in basketball. And this is a quick story. My buddy and I we were the only two potheads on the team. And so we were going to get the trophy presented in front of our school. And we decided to go on a little space cruise, and we got pulled over and arrested. And so, our moms, families, cameras are just waiting for us, and we never showed up, And it just didn't make it, tough day. And, my mom picks me up on the side of the freeway because I wasn't 18. And, God, that poor lady, I love her to death. But, she just looks into my stoned eyes, and she's like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "Aunt, do you really want me to tell you? I need you to go to the Wendy's drive-thru and let me go home and take a nap for 2 hours. And we'll talk when I wake up, And but after that, when it wears off, the shame, the guilt, the fear, the anxiety, what's everybody going to think? I got suspended from school for like 2 weeks or something crazy. It was this whole big deal. And so it kind of led back to that where I was like, you know what, never doing that again. And then sure enough, the next opportunity, had no idea what an alcoholic was, but definitely all those traits and stuff were showing up. And so a big part for me was constantly just like, you know what, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to change because of this, and this external thing. Like I'm going to be better for sports. And then it went on. I graduated high school barely, Like I look back at I got a 4.0 one term and then like a 2.2. It was just like showed up, just that whole entitlement of just I can do whatever I want. We'll figure it out later. I really developed that trait just to where kind of burning my way through life. And I call it just kind of the victim mode or the entitlement mode. That was just full force the whole time, And so my older brothers had all gone and served LDS missions, and I was really sick of Utah. And on it, I think back to that, like, why did I do that? Because I didn't know, but it was just like this safe thing. And it also kind of felt like going on The Price is Right and winning a trip somewhere, not knowing where you're going to go and just heading out, And so off I went. And I used a little bit up until I left. And it was this big thing where it was like I was going to stop, And then my very first day on my mission, I hadn't even unpacked my bags. My companion and I got T-boned by a Mustang going 75 miles an hour. And I come to, and he's getting taken out of the ambulance into a helicopter. He's getting life flighted. And I'm like in this Band-Aid station in Podunk, South Carolina with, some serious injuries. And, there was that one thing that I had gone back to that made me feel that relief when I was scared, I just wanted my mom. And so the flame was lit, and that switch flipped back on to where it was like, okay, this is all valid. I'm out here serving God or whatever the case may be. And so I used and drank while I was on my mission for the entirety of the time. And I guess that's just what I needed to do, It used to be really hard for me to say that, but that's just really how it was. I came home and, was a pretty skinny and scared kid and didn't really have any plans for the future. I wouldn't say I knew necessarily what an alcoholic was, but I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, and that, I don't know if anybody else has kind of been in that spot where you're circling the drain and you're just waiting until you go down the drain, and then you'll figure it out. You know it's going to happen, and that's really what it felt like to me. And that happened for me, and just kind of the whole thing of my family finding out and me kind of saying all the things that were going on. And I remember my dad, tough love guy, just kind of hard-nosed, go to work. Just that feeling of his just disappointment. Like I'd never really gotten validation from my dad, and just I really felt like in that moment that he hated me, And so it kind of kicked into gear. You know what? I'm going to get sober for my family. I'm going to, put everything back together. I'm going to go to treatment, and it felt like going into treatment was going to be a car wash. Just kind of you get the ticket to ride, and I went into treatment, and I know from the bottom of my heart that I meant it, that I wanted to get and stay sober, and I really intellectualized the whole program. I was kind of like, I don't know, there's one guy in this room that can attest to it, a little bit of Captain Recovery vibes going on. If I can just memorize the steps and have the answers for everything and be there. And when I really am honest with myself, I look back, and those previous attempts, I was just wanting to fast forward. I was just wanting to get past it, I didn't really want to internalize and look at the things. I had so much shame and guilt from what I had done. And I was really putting my alcoholism on me as being just a bad dude. And all the thoughts of constitutionally incapable, I would relate with that. And got out of treatment and would make it for a little while. I'd come into rooms like this, and I've been to thousands of meetings in my life, and I'm so thankful that rooms like this exist, because the same feeling I feel in here, I felt when I went to my first meeting, and I felt just that attraction to like, wow, there's something here. I don't know if it's for me, but there's something going on, and knew where to go when I needed it. And just to kind of encapsulate, there was just about a decade where I would kind of do the 2-step, and not really get to the 3rd step. I would build it up. I would burn it down. I would get a job back. I would get a new pair of shoes, get into a toxic relationship or not. And really trying to build this beautiful life from the outside, and was just kind of waiting for the escalator to take me the rest of the way. And when I look back at that, the truth for me is that I hadn't reached a spiritual bottom personally. I had seen where I had let other people down. I had seen where alcohol had ruined my life, but I hadn't reached a personal spiritual bottom. And makes sense, I didn't really know what God was. I had a lot of resentments towards some of my upbringing, and mostly just that I saw it work for everybody else around me except me, so I was pretty pissed about that. And so I would go in, I'd get a new big book, I'd go to treatment, I'd get out, and I just stopped working, and then also for me, the using stopped working as well. Can't get drunk anymore. Didn't really have a draw to using anymore, and but it's kind of what I did to just exist, and was miserable, and would see the writing on the wall, and would just head down, beeline towards it, over and over and over and over and over again, and God, if I had melted down all the 24-hour chips I've ever gotten, you could probably build an aircraft carrier. But that's what it felt like. That's a little ego comment. Maybe a model aircraft carrier. But just doing that over and over and over again, it was I'm not going to be able to get it. What I was really telling myself back there is I can't do this, And I was sick and tired. And so, but I had heard enough and felt enough, and I had enough connections. And that's why I feel like it matters so much how we treat people in these rooms, regardless of their walk. Because you never know what day, what month someone's going to have a hard time, and they're going to have to walk back through the doors. And it could be us, like what was said earlier, unless we're doing our work, and there's a lot of shame. I was talking with someone today who's I had a slip and I'm just ashamed. I need a few days before I can come back, and I was just I get that. And our sobriety is just guaranteed upon the work that we do. So 2020 I moved back to Utah from Colorado, and I reached out to some really close friends and really just kind of plugged back in. This is really where the roots of my recovery had always been. I had some bad times out in Colorado, and tapped back in, and I really kind of just shut my mouth and just started doing the stuff. I went to treatment. I did an outpatient treatment. Didn't have a license, was unemployable, had, just so much wreckage. I had some legal stuff that was just whatever. And I knew I just had to put my head down and just keep going, When I first got sober, I'm 6'3" or something like that. I had this 15-speed mountain bike. It was a medium-sized mountain bike. I was living in a sober living that cost $250 a month. And I would ride my bike to this construction job with a hard hat on, go hide my bike because I was still ashamed that people were seeing I was riding my bike to work, and go and work a day and then go home. And just I knew that it wasn't going to be like that forever. I knew it wasn't. But the reason I knew that is because I had a pretty strong spiritual awakening, May of 2020, just after April. I was doing my 4-step at this park up in Kaysville, and I don't know, not to get too woo-woo, but I just had one of those times where everything just slowed down. I was finishing my 4-step, and anytime I had done a 4-step before, it was like a confession to I'm this because of that, And I just felt this calm come over me, and it was beautiful scenery, and a couple of other little things happened. I was listening to the song, and it came on, and it choked me up, and I just felt peace and calm. And that knot kind of just was starting to come undone a little bit. And what it really told me is just slow down, dude. You're going to be all right. And just slow the fuck down. You've been going too fast, man. You can't win the AA marathon, And so that's what I've done. And just stay consistent and stay steady. And, I was skeptical again about the steps. I read the big book pretty consistently. I'm like, I got to pick the right guy to take me through the steps. And, just that terminal uniqueness that comes up. It's just like, I don't know if I want to talk about that, or at least for me, my brain shut off to certain things. And so I just did it. I just picked a random person and just started going through the steps again. And the real work, at least for me, was what I have chosen to do on my own time. And to start to do things on purpose. Like, I've heard about prayer and meditation. I was like, holy shit, dude, I've been so full of crap this whole time that, like, I hear about it. Like, yeah, I mean, I've probably talked about meditation before, having never done it, and like, that might help you slow down, buddy, but just actually taking the steps and doing the work and walking through it slowly, and being honest with my fellows. I think that the one of the biggest upheavals for me was step 3, and I love the 12 and 12. I just want to read this little part where in step 3 that really helped me have a pretty good shift. It's in the middle of a paragraph. I'm just going to start where it hit me. It says, "But now it appears that there are certain things which only the individual can do, all by himself and in the light of his own circumstances. He needs to develop the quality of willingness. When he acquires willingness, he's the only one who can make the decision to exert himself. Trying to do this is an act of his own will. All of the 12 steps require sustained and personal exertion to conform their principles, and so we trust to God's will. It is when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. To all of us, this was a most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. We had tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us." And I really struggled with that whole God's will, my will, and how does that come together? And another part I love in the book is where it's talking about the 10th step, where it says when we give our will to God, we can exercise our willpower all along that spiritual line that we wish. And for me, what I'm starting to discover is that my higher power, I can't see my higher power, it's the new me. It's that will that I know. It's that intuition that is the growing man who's, walked through felonies, getting my son back in my life, becoming employable again, starting a career, having a couple bills on auto pay, pretty big deal, seriously, the first time I did that, I'm like, shit, we're 2 months in a row, it's happening, all right, let's go, but coming from where I came from, it was not like that, because I was so willing to just burn it all down and then just go figure it out, and some of the hardest times in my sobriety have been when things have been going awesome, because that's when it really tests you, You got a comma in your bank account for a few months straight, it can test you. And that is where I've learned from the people around me, because I see the people who have long-term sobriety is they haven't done anything special other than just be consistent and to stay tapped in and to keep going. And, I have friends, and I've had hard times in my sobriety, but I have friends who, they've lost kids and family members, and they've stayed sober, and that was another aha moment for me, is that I'm in this because I'm an alcoholic. The rest of my life kind of just gets to become better because of that. And, early on I wanted to go preach it at the rooftops. I'm like, dude, the Mormons have no idea. If they just work the steps, if everybody worked the steps, that whole entire thing. And the other key to that, what it talks about there, is it's that willingness and that humility. And humility to me is that my actions speak now. And all those amends I had written up for my family members about certain specific times, the best ones have taken care of themselves, just through my actions of me showing up. I had a moment today, just to kind of circle back to my dad. He's retired, bored, came down to my work. His love language is service, and he came down to my work to fix this door, drove 40 minutes to come and do it. And I work at a community center, and he sees what we're doing there, and he goes to leave, and I walk him out, and I just thanks, Dad, I love you. And I don't think my dad's ever really said he loved me, but he just kind of looked back at me, and he got choked up and gave me some air knuckles, And he told me he loved me with his eyes, you know what I mean? And that's taken a long time from You know, the dad who just didn't ever think. You know, and the thing about this disease, what I've seen is that it's secretive, it's cunning, baffling, powerful, it's deadly. You know, and anytime I've like slipped or like started to get in trouble is when I start to isolate, and it'll get you alone first, get you alone up here. And that's why I really, really love what I had read before, is that, you know, it's with our heart that we can see rightly. And that's what we get to share here in these rooms, and that's what I feel when I'm around, you know, other people in recovery. And I'm thankful for you asking for me to speak. That's all I got.